Shabbat Shalom. I had the privilege of living in Israel during 1 year of my rabbinic term, and my poor family had to suffer through my fascination with the archaeology of ancient synagogues. It is one of the blessings and curses of Judaism that we have such a long history, and our history is long enough that large portions of it are archaeology rather than just the local 200-year-old building. And my fascination with the architecture, with the style, the structure, the way that the rooms were laid out was coupled also with the decorative motifs of how our ancestors made their places more than just large stone blocks. Because after all, that was the standard medium of construction in the land of Israel at the time. And it gets a little boring. And our ancestors clearly knew that. And so there would be mosaic designs, there would be carvings. You could clearly understand that the roofs, most of which had been gone, had other decorative elements as well as being artistically crafted, much like the roof here in Temple Israel. And one symbol kept coming up over and over and over again. And it's not surprising. It is the oldest Jewish symbol. It is found not only in beautiful architecture, it is found scratched almost as graffiti. It is found stamped onto the coins that are found from the ancient world. Indeed, it is so iconic as a Jewish symbol that it is even found in the triumphant markings of other nations in their conquest of us. This, of course, is the symbol of the menorah. Exactly. I know most of us nowadays, when we think about Jewish symbols, we'll think about a Star of David as being classic, and certainly having become the center of the flag of Israel. That is understandable. But that's not actually the symbol of Israel. That is to say, if you look at the Great Seal of Israel, it is a menorah. Exactly right. The menorah is the eternal symbol as well as the eternal flame of our people. And yet we seem to take that for granted. That is to say, why? Out of all of the symbols that are found throughout our history, why the menorah? I mean, certainly the Ark of the Covenant, which got its own movie, has more prominence within the Mishkan. It is in the Holy of Holies. Why did that not become the symbol? Certainly the altar that was used for all of the sacrifices, which would have been visible to the great masses of the people, unlike the menorah, which was more hidden away within the inner sanctums. It would have been more familiar and a perfectly fine symbol. Certainly the shape of the Mishkan itself, and then later the tabernacle, could have been the symbol. But no, the menorah became the symbol. Have you ever thought of why this piece would become so iconic for the symbol of our nation? Maybe it's just our fascination with fire. We are human after all, and everybody loves a good fire. But I think there is more to it than that, and it's intrinsic in the very structure of the menorah itself. Famously, the menorah has how many branches? 7 branches. Beautifully symmetrical with one central shaft and then 3 curving upward branches on each side, creating a beautiful structure of 7. I talked about the arrangement of this in my Wednesday class a bit more, but the number 7 is special in and of itself. If you are familiar with biblical Hebrew and biblical style, you'll know that 7 doesn't happen accidentally throughout the Torah or indeed throughout the Tanakh. When something comes by 7, it is usually a big, giant, flashing light saying, pay attention, this means something. It is not a number that falls into the text at random. 7 generally within biblical Hebrew has a connotation of completion and perfection. And we see 7s everywhere once you actually start looking. Not only the 7 branches of the menorah, we see 7, of course, in the Shemitah year, the 7 years that lead up till the sabbatical. And then the 7 cycles of sabbaticals which lead up to the Jubilee, 7 sevens, making 49. Likewise, we just finished counting of the Omer, which itself was a 7 sevens, 7 weeks of 7 days, which also was the perfect completion of 49. But where else do we see 7 throughout our biblical language? 7 days in the week, or more prominently, 7 days of creation. That is to say, 7 days of the week. Okay, fine. This is a relatively good approximation of our cycle around the sun. Most ancient cultures seem to settle upon a 7-day week because, mathematically it does kind of fit. You get the whole leap issues that you have to work out for keeping your calendar in place, or give up and just let it roll like some lunar calendars do. But it's pretty natural. But Judaism went beyond saying the 7 days of the week are just 7 days of the week. We said these are 7 days of creation. If you ever need a reminder of that, of course, we've got that on our ark doors. But what is our model of creation within Judaism? What do we do with each of those days? I don't mean the full rundown, but what does it seem to imply through this set of 7 days unfolding into creation? Is it just a random collection of taxonomy of different things that were made? Is that the only reason why God shared with us the description of Bereshit? I know it often gets trivialized into comics and animation for children or pretty artwork, but there is much more going on there.
I think, well, one thing that comes across to me is like at the end of 7 days, at the end of 6 days, it's complete. And in our 7th day, we rest. So the process is complete.
All right, so one of the most striking aspects of the Jewish model of creation is that the final act of creation is the negation of creating. That is to say, the creation is not complete until Shabbat has happened, but Shabbat is, very explicitly in the Torah, the day of no creation. It is the day when God rests. Not because he's tired, because that's not how God works, but to tell us that creation is not merely about the constructive, creative process, it is also about stepping back from that. Just as an artist will step back from the canvas, rather than continuing to paint over and over and over whatever they have already laid down, so too we must step back from that canvas and reflect upon what has been created. Any other thoughts about the unfolding of creation?
There's like a symmetry between day 1 and day 4, and then day 2 and day 5, and then day 3 and day 6. Where day 1 is like light and dark, day 4 is the signs that mark day and night, day 2 is the sea and land, day 5 is the birds and the birds and water. Day 3 has like the creation of like that's land and object and the thing that grows on it. Day 6 is the animals that live on the land. So I guess that would tie into Menorah too, where it's symmetrical on either side.
Beautifully put. If you've never noticed the details of creation, I do highly recommend going back through the readings of Genesis with a pen or pencil and paper and actually making notes of different things, because you will begin to discover certain parallels. As Zev is outlining, you can line up the every 3 days into a bit of a pattern. For the benefit of those who couldn't hear everything Zev said, and not that I'm sure my voice will do much better, but I've got a microphone. Day 1 deals with the creation of light, and by extension also darkness. And then when we get to our day 3, we see the actual symbols, the sun, the moon, and the stars, that will mark light and darkness for us. And day 2 deals with the creation of the firmament, the heavens above, as well as the waters below, the separation of waters. Day 4, then, I'm thinking of my day off, sorry. Day 5, Day 5 then deals with the things that actually live in those places, the birds and the fishes. And day 3, which deals with the creation of dry land, the separation of the waters from the earth in order to be a place to live. is paralleled in day 6, where the things that actually live on the dry land are discussed. And indeed, this can be seen as being a 3 on each side description of the menorah, with allowing, of course, the brightest central focus still being Shabbat, as that central reminder of the tie-in of all of creation. Additionally, the entire unfolding of creation tells us that creation unfolds. I mean, we take it for granted. We're modern 21st century Jews, and so we have already this understanding that, of course, creation started simple. Of course, God started with light and darkness, and then moved on to the firmament and the waters, and then moved on to the dry land and the planets and everything else and the complexity of all of creation until we finally reach humanity, and then the step back for Shabbos. But that is not a given. Creation did not have to unfold that way. Do you think it was easier for God to create this way and beyond his capacity to simply snap the fingers he doesn't have and create all of everything on day 1? But God didn't have enough gas in the tank, and he had to do it piecemeal. He had to build up to it because he lacked the omnipotence to create all simultaneously? No. God is trying to teach us something in the unfolding of creation. He is trying to teach us that creation is this pattern of moving from chaos to order through the addition of divine will, which creates complexity. We often have a temptation to believe that it is through simplicity that we will find order. That if we reduce everything down to a simple thing, then we will find the pattern and order and everything will be right. God tells us, in fact, it is exactly the opposite. The universe starts off, as it says right behind me, tohu vavohu, as symbolized in the artistry above, with the chaotic letters cascading around. The world starts off chaotic, and God makes it ordered by creating more complexity, not by reducing the complexity of chaos. By putting in God's will, that things will have a place, a time, a shape, a form. We find that chaos is turned into order, turned into this incredibly complex, incredibly intricate, incredibly fragile world that we now know and love and enjoy. That is not intuitive. Indeed, we still often are in a reductionist mindset, looking to simplify things to make them pure, simplify things to make them true, simplify things to bring them into their essence. But that is not the pattern of creation. And indeed, the menorah symbolizes this beautifully. The menorah, you may remember, was crafted from a single piece of gold. Now that's very strange. If anybody here has ever done any metalwork, you'll know trying to make a huge candelabrum, they didn't use candles, they used oil, but huge candelabrum, what do we use for that? Huge multi-branch lamp? Huge candelabrum, you know what I mean. If you try to make a huge candelabrum, what you normally would do is you would create the different pieces, you would hammer them separately around the anvil, making the shape and the form, and then you would weld them together to make the entirety fit together. You wouldn't think of taking one giant block and hammering it until you pulled out all of the different branches of this menorah. That would be crazy. Well, that's what God told us to do. And so that's the way we actually made it. But it shows that there is a unity throughout all of these branches. This is undergirded as well by the fact that how are the branches arranged? Are the branches simply 7 branches coming up from a solid plank at the bottom? No. There is a central shaft and a base at the bottom, and it is out of that shaft that all of the other arms of the menorah come. If you're not sure, there's one right up there behind me that can remind you of that. And although we may get very creative in our Hanukkiyot for celebrating Hanukkah, remember that that is the original image, the image of a central shaft and the branches coming out. Sometimes it is easy to think that those branches coming out are different. If we look at them each separately, it's like they are floating in their own ether. But they are connected to that central shaft. They are connected to each other. They are indeed formed from the exact same material, hammered to encompass them all. There is not a left branch and a right branch, and a left branch too, and a right branch too. There is simply one unified object that looks as though it is separated, looks as though it is in pieces. Much like creation. Creation gives us the illusion of distance, of separation, indeed of alienation, one from another, and all of us from the world around us, and the world from all that is beyond. But that is not how God made the world. He crafted all of us from that same substance. He crafted the entire world in the same will. He shows it unfolding so that we will be able to trace ourselves back and recognize that we must each occupy our own lamp. We do have the diversity, the complexity needed to bring order to the chaos, but we should not be lost in our own small finial of the menorah and forget that we should trace ourselves down through the complete and same substance to each and every other aspect of creation as well. The menorah provides a blueprint for unfolding our own sense of self within the world. Our sense of self as individuals, a single person within the complexity of a society, but recognizing that we are all joined together, and yet we must all still be the complex individual that we are, not losing our distinctiveness, for it is through that complexity that chaos is overcome. We also can recognize this as people, as a nation, as a community, that we too, we occupy a small piece, but we are still crafted and connected to the entire diversity of the world around us. Likewise, we can recognize, even as a species, as humans, that we, yes, occupy a unique and precious place in the world's tapestry, but we are still interwoven from the same substance as the rest of the world around us. The menorah became the symbol of the Jewish people because it symbolizes this incredible diversity and strength and inherent unity. The dollar bill, we call it e pluribus unum. In Judaism, it would probably be reversed. My Latin isn't good enough. It is not from many one, but from one comes many. From the original echad, from Adonai, came the many different facets of the world around us, the many different stages of our life, the many different phases of Jewish history. But it is all still linked as one. It is all underpinned by the same substance of the creation. The menorah is our eternal symbol because it is a symbol truly of eternity in a way that no other aspect and artifact of our history has ever quite duplicated. We lose ourselves if we only look at it as being something to give a little light. Shabbat Shalom.